and you're going to disappoint some people along the way. And so that was kind of an aha that I took away from my experience at Keynote School. I want to read you this other piece here. So the initial challenge and risk of exercising leadership is to go beyond your authority, put your credibility and your position on the line in order to get people to tackle the problems of the moment. Without the willingness to challenge people's expectations of you, there's no way you can escape being dominated by the social system and its inherent limits. Adaptive work like this creates risk and conflict and instability because addressing the issues underlying adaptive problems involves upending deep and entrenched norms. Thus, leadership requires disturbing people, but at a rate that they can absorb. I'll give you an example. For me, last year, the Board of Forestry approved a rule called the High Value Conservation Area along state forest. We haven't really designated high conservation areas in the state forest. We manage state forests to provide a whole suite of different values, and it's been a fighting concept for a long time between the conservation community and the landowners and our timber purchasers. Last year, the Board of Forestry adopted a high value conservation area rule. For the first time, we said these are areas that we're focusing on conservation as our goal here. Here's the rules of engagement for managing these lands, and that took a lot of work. We, frankly, a bunch of people who were not very happy with us when we did that. And our traditional supporters were not very happy with us when we did that. And yet we felt that that was an important step that we needed to make to be able to maintain public permission to manage. We felt that was an important evolution of our business, and we had to disappoint some people along the way, but we hopefully didn't disappoint them to the point where they, were willing to throw the switch or back out or not play ball with us, or worse than that, to try to attack us and bring us down. So, I think that a key for that is to be able to disappoint folks at a rate at which they can absorb. It's that feeling. So for me, leadership is that feeling that you have when you know that you have to stand up and you have to say that something is going to be uncomfortable and it's going to take a discussion or an initiative to be unknown, and it's going to require everything that you can to give it, to move it in that direction. So for me, that's what leadership is. It's not management. It's not supervision. It's making some needed change that is going to be hard for people to accept because it's going to create loss, and we've got to help them through that. Again, we're not leading all the time because I don't think we could. I think it's impossible to do that. I think about management. Management is really kind of working out the puzzle of keeping the trains going all the time, going to all the race stations. For me, that's what management is. Leadership is kind of going into the unknown and willing to take people with you, and those people willing to allow you to do that. Supervision, in my view, is taking care of the people, helping them to be the best that they can be. Sometimes those terms get interchangeable: leadership, management, supervision. I just wanted to kind of call that out here. So for me, I feel like there's four corners for me of my leadership, and the first is this idea that it's okay for me to disappoint my supporters. It's okay for me to do that. In fact, if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job. And that revolutionized the way I thought about my job. Because I've thought for so long that the leader's job is to bring people together, is to find a win-win, is to get to the win. Well, it is that. It's really that. You have to do that. But you also have to be willing to walk out beyond the edge from time to time to make things uncomfortable for folks, to disappoint them, and to make up if you can, of course. And it's kind of a hard thing to get your head around, but I would ask you to really think about that this week, to think about that when you go home. It's not just about win-win, very important, but it also means change. So that's for me, that's the first corner of how I think about my job and think about what I owe Paul and Katie and Kristen and all of us at the agency. I also feel like I've got to have solid working relationships. I mean, you know this, about rapport and mutual respect and trust. All that stuff is going to prevent or solve more problems than any technical fix that you can bring, or any high-end computer model or subject matter expertise that you can get. The corollary, of course, is you've got to have the best subject matter expertise in your team, but you've got to be able to use it effectively, and you've got to be able to have those working relationships. Another corner. It has to do with your attitude, because when it really comes down to it, it is all you have. Your attitude is all you have to when it comes to leveraging a challenge or a situation or an opportunity. And that means bringing the we're going to figure it out type of approach. It's part of our FIRE program in the agency. It's part of that sense of purpose and camaraderie. We're going to figure it out. The glass is half full. You know, I had to go to Lloyd's and talk to people who've written $50 million worth of checks to Oregon in the last 2 years and tell them why they should insure us again. And you know, I had to have the right attitude in the room there, and they had some questions that they needed to ask. So your attitude is really, you know, it's everything. It's literally all you have when it comes to leveraging that challenging situation. And then so that's the third corner for me. The fourth corner really is self-awareness and situational awareness, and understanding where your boundaries are, having the official as well as the unofficial systems and mechanisms in place to understand how you're doing or how you're not doing, or where you are or where you aren't, and to really develop methods to assess and to understand the world around you. And we did a simulation last week. We had all the agency directors for in the Pacific Northwest, the fire agencies, and we for Oregon and Washington together for a day, and we basically burned down the Northwest. It was a really hellacious simulation that we had there, and as we worked our way through it, there was places where we knew we had to ask for help, and we had a conversation about the culture of the fire organization sometimes is not really wanting to ask for help, you know, until you need it or until it's too late. And I think one of the things I would say is that leadership is asking for help when and maybe even before you know that you need it, and really understanding where your boundaries are as you get into a situation. So for me, those are the four corners of leadership that I try to do in my job all the time, and have tried in all those as I've walked across the river, like I've said, from stone to stone, hopped across the river, that I've tried to bring along with me. I also have over time, you know, kind of developed a checklist, and that I like to try to run on a regular basis. And you know, a pilot uses a checklist. They know the items better than anybody. And they have very good instincts, but when you're in the heat of battle, you need a checklist. And I know, like, when we're in the midst of a controversy around this stream buffer rule, you know, it's helpful to kind of run through the checklist. For me, look up frequently, look at the horizon. Don't get so hypnotized by the moment that you can't look up, and look up at the horizon or over the horizon. And that's, you know, what's coming and what's really going on. As a leader, the single most important thing that you can do is to listen to people, and that's another checklist item for me. Is listen more than you talk. I'm not doing very well here for the last 50 minutes, but he asked me to. So, right. So it's really true listening, really checking on are you really doing that? Are you? I like to say that you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And so you have to ask, and you have to look and engage. For me, that's a checklist item. Do I really know what this is? I think I know what this is, but do I really know what this is? Other thoughts come to mind. Being an advocate for clarity. Do we have the right roles? Are we all lined up on the right roles and the right goals and expectations and the scope? Don't assume. Get those straight from the beginning. Something I've tried to do along the way is to give away ownership and credit and a measure of control in everything that you do. I think when you can make the work belong to other people, things can happen. And not worry about who's taking credit for it, but give away ownership. And so those are some things. Those are some checklist items that I like to run through as I'm running up on challenges. Because it's hard to remember that. Just like for a pilot, it's hard to remember with everything going on in the cockpit that you've got to check yourself out here. So I want to close with some thoughts about what you owe yourself and kind of the whole person. And Paul talked about this a little bit when we started out here. And it really is what you owe yourself. It's not about the job that you had or that you have right now or the job that you're going to have in a couple years.
It's really about the arc of your career and in your life, really, and how you are prepared and preparing yourself all along the way to lead. How you are assessing and accessing your passions and your gifts and your insights, and how you're really trying to focus those things on a regular basis into the pathway that you create ahead, renewing yourself along the way as a person, not just as an urban forester. I think you owe it to yourself to feed that self-awareness and self-assessment, to know your callings and your energies and your passions. And so ideally, continually in the back of our minds, in addition to solving the problems that come to us on a day-to-day basis, throughout our careers during the valleys, when we're at the lowest spot, as well as when we're feeling pretty good about things, that we're charting the route of travel that we make for ourselves. Because I heard some discussion about a retirement coming up on the cadre here, and there's going to come a time when you're going to get to a place after what I hope is a very long and successful career for you, that you're going to have some room to run with your leadership and your gifts, and you're going to have the opportunity to continue to make the world a better place. And if you are assessing and thinking about that and thinking about yourself and thinking about what your gifts and your passions are along the way, you're going to be ready for that. So I hope that you have fun this week. I hope that you challenge yourself to give a little bit more than you think you can. It sounds like this group is going to ask that from you. I hope that you can operate at the edge, or maybe just a little bit beyond your comfort zone from time to time. I hope you don't disappoint these guys. I mean, that's a different context. You can't disappoint the cadre here. But you've got a really good cadre here, a great agenda, and a special place here at the Oregon Garden, and a weather forecast which is unbelievable. We actually would like it to rain. If we could work on that here in Oregon. I hope you make the best of the week. So those are my thoughts. I'd be glad to, if there's any questions or comments, but I'm also glad to turn you loose because I know it's been a long day for a lot of you.
Thank you, Doug.
All right.
We do have about 7 minutes before I cut you loose, so we have a few times for questions if you'd like to. Question for Doug.
Please.
I'm Zana from East Texas. My question is, you mentioned that the landowners pay for part of your fire program.
Yep.
Can you explain how that works?
I sure can. Yeah. So in Oregon, our base budget, our fire department, the men and women, the 500 engines that we have, they're paid for half and half by the landowners and half by the state's general fund. That base budget. We have these large fire cost budgets, so as we catch most of our fires at less than 10 acres, 95% of all of our fires. When we burn through that base budget and a fire escapes and becomes a project fire, we're into obviously FEMA if it's threatening homes like it has in Texas, and then we've got our insurance policy with Lloyd's of London, and then we're back into the general fund. But the landowners pay a per acre fire patrol assessment in Oregon. For half and half. One of the reasons for that, one of the outcomes of that is that we have a special relationship with landowners. We have something that we call a complete and coordinated system. We share resources. The landowners, we're the only state agency, the legislature approves our budget, but our fire budget, the local landowners actually have to approve the fire portion of our budget at the district level, down to the district buying a lawnmower. And so there's one of the things that does is it kind of joins us at the hip there. And so we really have a high trust and a lot of interaction with the landowners. Also the same when you get up into the upper end, the large fire costs are split half and half between the state's general fund and the landowner community. They actually pay into something called the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund. It's an anomaly in the West. Most other Western states, the general fund pays for the lion's share for the base budget as well as for the large fire costs. And we get reminded about that all the time. Yep.
A question back here.
Please.
Keith Mars, the city of Austin, Texas. Some of your real skill for communication with your target audience. In other words, you're able to tailor your message to who you're speaking to. When you talk about urban forest issues, two-part question. One is, what do you see as the issues in the state of Oregon? And two, how do you communicate those issues on a relatable level to whoever it may be?
Good question. I have Paul Reese. That's my secret weapon on that. So, for us, we've got a relatively small urban and community forestry staff. And so, for me, as I talk to to legislators, as I talk to folks that help fund us, to our landowner partners, to our kind of traditional stakeholders, talking to them about the importance of connecting with the urban community is very important. And trying to get folks in alignment and in agreement that is a good use of dollars. So that's a conversation that is underway and has been underway. I guess I would say, in terms of issues, getting the resources and the knowledge to down at the local level so that folks can serve their tree boards and do the work that they need to do. And that's why, the work that Paul and Katie and Kristen do is so important. I know that where our traditional program